Black and white sports reporters. Well, don't look now. Don't look now, but it looks like, if I am reading this correctly, and if my understanding of the previous CBA is correct, and somebody may come back and correct me, but it looks like the WNBA finally turned a profit in 2025.
Watch closely. That noise you're hearing isn't excitement. It's hesitation, a mix of doubt and confusion. After 28 years of financial struggles, the WNBA has triggered revenue sharing for the first time in its history. In March 2025, the Players' Union announced the milestone, a total of $16 million in shared revenue. Half of that, $8 million, will go directly to players who were active in the 2025 season. The other $8 million is earmarked for marketing agreements and promotions. On paper, it looks like a historic breakthrough. But here's the detail most people are missing. The league itself has not confirmed these numbers. Team owners have not released official profit figures. That silence is striking. Without independent verification, there's no way to know if the revenue sharing reflects real, sustainable profit or if it's a one-time boost. For players, it's a moment of validation. For the league, it's a carefully controlled narrative. And for fans and analysts, it raises as many questions as it answers. How much did the league actually earn? Can this level of revenue continue? Is this a turning point or just an outlier year? The headlines celebrate a milestone, but the truth is more complicated. One thing is certain. For the first time in nearly 3 decades, players are finally seeing the league's financial potential reflected in their paychecks. How the league chooses to handle transparency from here could shape both public perception and future negotiations.
What this proves, because what if the league made $25 million profit? I mean, are we here to consider that to be good? What if they made $50 million profit? I still don't consider, I mean, when you consider what most other sports are making, are we to consider that to have been good? Because they get a revenue share, it's my understanding, after expenses get paid.
Here's the central question. Revenue sharing under the 2020 Collective Bargaining Agreement, CBA, only kicks in once the league reaches a set financial threshold. After that, 30% is deducted to cover expenses, and the remaining money is split evenly, with players receiving 50%. So if players are set to receive $16 million in total, the math suggests that the league cleared roughly $32 million in profit after expenses. That sounds impressive at first glance, but context matters. Consider the NBA for comparison. A single, moderately successful NBA franchise can earn over $100 million in profit in a single year. Meanwhile, the entire WNBA league, with all 13 teams combined, is making around a third of that in one season. In other words, the WNBA is celebrating a milestone that would barely register for just one NBA team over a few months. Still, for the WNBA, this is significant. After nearly 3 decades of losses, turning a profit, any profit, is a milestone. Revenue sharing being triggered proves that the league can operate successfully under the right circumstances. It's a moment of hope and validation, especially for the players who have long argued that the league has untapped financial potential. But it also highlights how much further the league has to go. While $32 million in profit is a step forward, it shows the scale difference between the WNBA and larger leagues. Celebrating this milestone makes sense, but it's also a reminder of how fragile the financial model remains. One standout season does not guarantee long-term stability, and the league still faces the challenge of growing its audience, increasing revenue streams, and sustaining profitability over multiple years.
Would be at least probably $20 million to have triggered this. Union leaders said the league notified player leadership earlier this month that they hit the benchmark. 13 teams will receive a total of $8 million from the league to disperse amongst players, the union said. The Women's National Basketball Players Association declined to provide bank statements. The amount of revenue generated by the league or the number required to trigger the revenue sharing.
Here's the detail most people are missing. The revenue targets in the 2020 collective bargaining agreement were based on 2019 numbers, with the assumption that the league would grow steadily by about 20% each year. At the time, that seemed reasonable. Then COVID-19 hit. The 2020 and 2021 seasons were heavily disrupted, and revenue dropped sharply. Those original targets suddenly looked almost impossible to reach. The league had built its financial projections assuming modest, steady growth. What no one could have predicted was the sudden surge in attention sparked by Caitlin Clark. The 2025 season completely changed the landscape. Average attendance across the league jumped by 48%. Television ratings reached historic highs, with ESPN airing the most-watched WNBA game ever during the playoffs, drawing 2.3 million viewers. Merchandise sales tell a similar story. Products sold through the Players Union alone generated more than $10 million in 2025, up from just $2.5 million the previous year. That's a 400% increase in a single season. Jerseys, trading cards, and other player-branded merchandise were flying off the shelves. But here's the question that cuts to the core of the league's future. How much of this growth is sustainable? Strip away the Caitlin Clark effect and the numbers look very different. Much of the 2025 revenue boom was driven by one extraordinary talent capturing fan attention and media coverage. Without that star power, attendance, merchandise sales, and TV ratings could easily fall back closer to pre-2025 levels. In other words, while 2025 shows the league's potential, it also highlights the risk of depending heavily on a single player. The financial breakthrough is real, but the challenge now is building a system that can maintain growth, even when the Caitlin Clark effect fades.
Okay, let's put this out there first. Let us also understand that if they did turn a profit, this was the first time in history, ever. And if you think that doesn't make these owners nervous, that this was like a one-time hit, that this is not going to have legs, that this is not going to keep going, and I'm sure they're a little worried about the fact that, Caitlin Clark got hurt. They've only got one player that's driving all this. All these players, you should send all this money to Caitlin Clark, to be honest.
And this is what keeps ownership awake at night. The big question is simple. What happens if this surge doesn't last? Caitlin Clark suffered a foot injury early in the 2025 season, and she has been the driving force behind the league's recent growth. Home games for the Indiana Fever averaged over 17,000 fans, while road games featuring Indiana saw attendance jumps of 200 to 300% in some cities. Her impact extended beyond the court. Within weeks of the draft, her jersey became the fastest-selling item in WNBA history. Merchandise, media attention, and social engagement all surged. In short, the league's entire financial breakthrough in 2025 hinges on one 23-year-old player remaining healthy, performing well, and staying in the spotlight. That's not a long-term business plan. It's a gamble. If she gets injured, decides to play overseas, or simply doesn't maintain her superstar trajectory, the revenue spike could vanish almost overnight. For owners, it's both a triumph and a warning. One breakout talent can create incredible opportunity, but depending so heavily on a single player is risky. The 2025 season proves the league can be profitable, but it also exposes just how fragile that success is. Without a more diversified model of growth, the WNBA remains vulnerable, and ownership knows it.
The union has 30 days to present its proposed payment structure to the league. The union leaders said they expect to submit their proposal in the next 2 weeks. The league's payment is due 60 days after it issued its report to the union, according to the CBA. Union leaders also said on Sunday they will be divvying up $9.25 million to players from licensing revenue generated since 2020. Oh, since 2020. Jersey sales, trading cards, video games, and other merch. The union expects to share that money by June.
Now let's break down what the players actually received, because the numbers tell a more nuanced story. The Women's National Basketball Players Association announced that it is distributing $9.25 million in licensing revenue covering the years 2020 through 2025. This is separate from the revenue-sharing payments, Licensing revenue comes from products that use players' names, images or likenesses, jerseys, trading cards, video games, and other merchandise featuring the WNBA logo. More than 250 players are receiving payments, with a maximum of $50,000 going to those who were active for all 6 seasons. To put that in perspective, during the previous licensing cycle from 2016 to 2019, the top payout for any player was just $1,600. That's right, $1,600 compared to $50,000, a 31-fold increase. So when players spent years talking about being broke, struggling to cover expenses, or flying commercial while NBA players traveled on private jets, they weren't telling the full story. The reality is that money was starting to flow, it just wasn't public yet. This increase in licensing revenue shows that the league was beginning to unlock its financial potential. It also highlights how much has changed in just a few years. While base salaries still have room to grow, players are now benefiting from income streams that didn't exist before, giving them more financial stability and recognition for their contributions both on and off the court.
During 2016 to 2019, with a maximum of $1,600 per player. So are they saying $9.25 million in 2020 to 2025? So it wasn't just, maybe it was last year. Nah, I don't know. See, that's hazy. The union began pursuing group licensing in 2018 at the direction of outgoing player leadership.
This is where things get uncomfortable for ownership. The Women's National Basketball Players Association released these numbers strategically during ongoing CBA negotiations. They're making a public case for a larger share of the league's revenue, and the stakes are high. Right now, the biggest points of contention are revenue sharing and salary caps. The union wants the 50-50 revenue split to begin at a lower financial threshold, which would allow players to benefit sooner. They also want expansion fees, money paid by new teams to join the league, to be included as basketball-related income, increasing the pool players can share. The league, however, has refused both requests, and you can see why. If we assume the league made about $32 million in profit on roughly $200 million in total revenue, that's a 16% profit margin. For a growing league, that's actually a solid number. But there's an important caveat. 2025 was an outlier, largely driven by one extraordinary player. Without that boost, the profit margin could shrink quickly. From ownership's perspective, committing to a larger guaranteed share during such a year carries risk. If revenue dips, they could be locked into higher payouts. That's why negotiations are tense. The union sees opportunity. Players finally have proof the league can be profitable. Owners see vulnerability. They know 2025 may not reflect a sustainable, repeatable model. In short, the numbers released by the union are a double-edged sword. They prove the league can make money, but they also highlight how dependent that profit is on unique circumstances. Both sides are calculating risk, leverage, and optics as they negotiate the next chapter of the CBA.
Sports cards, etc., then you know that's officially licensed by the players' union, blah, blah, blah. I think they turned a profit. If I'm understanding all of this, and it's always been my understanding that the league would have had to have turned a profit. At what level, we don't know, but would have had to turn a profit in order for these revenue sharing bonuses to finally trigger. Looks like they finally triggered. And I would very much assume, because they're not wanting to put it rightfully so, not wanting to put expansion.
3 new teams are joining the WNBA. Golden State Valkyries in 2025, followed by teams in Toronto and Portland in 2026. Each ownership group reportedly paid $15 million to join the league, bringing in a total of $45 million in new capital. Here's the conflict. The league has explicitly refused to count these expansion fees as basketball-related income under the current CBA. That means players won't receive a share of this money. The Women's National Basketball Players Association is understandably frustrated. From their perspective, expansion fees reflect growth. More teams mean more games, larger audiences, and increased value money players should have a stake in. Ownership sees it differently. They argue these fees are one-time capital investments, meant to fund league infrastructure, marketing, and operations, not ongoing revenue that should be shared. Both arguments make sense. Expansion fees do represent growth, but they aren't recurring income. Here's the key point. If ownership refuses to share expansion fees and worries about whether 2025's profit is sustainable, they will likely resist giving players a larger share of regular revenue. They know that the 2025 numbers may be an outlier, driven by unique circumstances, and they don't want to commit to higher payouts that could vanish in a less profitable season. This disagreement highlights a larger tension between the union and ownership. Players are pushing to benefit from growth, while the league is trying to protect itself against risk. How this standoff is resolved will influence the next CBA and shape the league's financial landscape for years to come.
Interesting. Now, a lot of people are going to be like, and I'm already seeing it, see, we told you they were making money. 1 damn year. 1 year is what we're talking about here. 1 year. And I'm going to be interested to see the owner's response to this. Are they going to release the figures? And if they did turn a profit, how pathetic is it going to end up being? All right? Because, I mean, what's to owners that have put all this money into owning franchises, what do you hope your return's going to be? Right? If you own a team, I would assume you'd want to make at least, what, $10 million profit off that team, I would think. Something that makes it worth your investment and worth your time. And the headache? I mean, good God, the headache? Tell me what you think.
Let's break down what all of this actually means, because the implications go far beyond one profitable season. For the players, this is validation. After decades of being told the league loses money, after being asked to be patient, and after being reminded to be grateful for what they had, they finally triggered the revenue sharing clause. This is the first concrete proof that the WNBA can generate profit. It completely changes the negotiating dynamic. Players aren't asking for charity anymore. They're demanding their contractually agreed-upon share of a business that is finally operating in the black. But here's the complication. The $8 million being distributed to active 2025 players is split across 13 teams, which works out to roughly $615,000 per team. Divide that among 12 roster spots, and you get an average of about $51,000 per player. That's significant, especially for those making the league minimum of around $64,000. But it's not life-changing wealth. It's not retire early money. For most, it's a meaningful bonus. The players who benefit the most are the veterans who were active from 2020 through 2025. They'll combine their revenue-sharing payout with licensing payments distributed by the Women's National Basketball Players Association. That adds up to roughly $100,000 extra for maybe 15 to 20 players league-wide. That's meaningful money, but it's still a small fraction of the league's total revenue and profit. For ownership, this is a moment of anxiety disguised as celebration. Yes, the league turned a profit, but much of that success came from an extraordinary circumstance. Caitlin Clark, the #1 pick in the 2024 draft, instantly became the most marketable player in league history. Her presence drove attendance, merchandise sales, and media attention in ways the league had never seen before. That doesn't happen every year, and it might not happen again for another decade. Owners understand something the public often misses. They have been subsidizing this league for 28 years. These weren't just small losses, they were large, sustained deficits. While the NBA has treated the WNBA as a social initiative and a way to engage female fans, the cumulative losses over nearly 3 decades likely exceed $500 million. So when owners look at a $32 million profit for a single season, they aren't celebrating. They're thinking, we'd need 19 more years like this just to break even on our original investment. This is why the league refuses to release the full financial figures. The optics are impossible to manage. If the profit seems small, critics will say the league isn't viable. If it seems large, players will argue they're underpaid. There's no winning move for the league, so they remain silent. For fans, this should be a moment of cautious optimism. The league can be profitable. Attendance is rising, the quality of play is improving, and young stars like Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese, and Cameron Brink are bringing new energy and excitement. But sustainability requires more than one transcendent player. It depends on consistent quality, competitive balance, and ongoing media and sponsor interest. The real test comes in 2026. Caitlin Clark will be in her second season, and the novelty factor will have faded. Casual fans who tuned in out of curiosity will either stay because they genuinely enjoy the product, or they'll drift away. That's when we'll find out if 2025 was a breakthrough or an anomaly. Here's the uncomfortable truth no one in the league wants to say. If Caitlin Clark suffers a major injury, decides to play overseas for higher pay, or simply fails to meet expectations, the league's financial model could collapse. Revenue sharing might disappear, and the league could return to its long history of losses. That's not sustainable. This isn't a league built on a solid financial foundation. It's a league built on hope, and on the shoulders of one extraordinary player. The Players' Union knows this, which is why they're pushing so hard in the current CBA negotiations. They understand this might be their only window of leverage for the next decade. If they don't secure better terms now, while the league is profitable and the media narrative is positive, they may not get another chance. Ownership knows this too, which is why they're resisting. They're betting the players won't risk a work stoppage during the league's first profitable season. A high-stakes game of chicken that both sides are fully aware of. The union has 30 days to present a proposed payment structure for revenue sharing, and they've committed to submitting it within 2 weeks. The league then has 60 days to process the payments, meaning that by early summer 2025, players will see that money in their accounts. Then the real negotiations begin. The current CBA expires after the 2027 season, and both sides want a deal completed before then to avoid uncertainty. But the gap between what players want and what ownership is willing to give remains massive. Revenue sharing thresholds, expansion fee treatment, salary cap structures, charter flight requirements, and marketing deals. Every single item is contentious. My prediction: a deal will be reached, because neither side can afford a work stoppage. But it likely won't be the transformative agreement players hope for. Ownership will offer modest improvements, point to revenue sharing as proof that the system works, and argue that long-term sustainability requires patience. Players will be frustrated but ultimately accept, because the alternative, risking everything during their small window of leverage, is far too dangerous. In 5 years, we'll likely have this same conversation again. One profitable season doesn't erase 28 years of structural challenges. It just proves that profitability is possible under the right circumstances. The ultimate question remains: can the WNBA sustain this profitability without Caitlin Clark? Can it build a business model that doesn't rely on one superstar? Or is 2025 just a temporary spike that will disappear the moment she's no longer the story? The league needs to answer these questions, even if it won't say them publicly. And fans, analysts, and players alike need to keep watching, because the next few seasons will determine whether this moment is the start of a new era, or simply an extraordinary one-off.